If you yourself don't think it's harmful and don't think it's wrong, then there's no point of even talking about it. If somebody really sees that this is wrong and that's something I cannot keep doing, I have to stop, all these barriers don't matter. You'll see. I am not immune. I don't have enough strength in me to say no. And I let myself be exposed to frequent, repetitive offers. What's going to happen? Eventually, I'll fail.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Teen Talk. My name is Samuel and we're blessed to be joined today with Father Daniel, the priest of Santa Barbara Coptic Orthodox Church, and we also have here with us today Patrick, Philo, and Effie. So I think a good first question here, Abuna, when really looking at the effects of vaping is the one that's seen the least but affects us the most, the physical effects. So how do you think vaping can really impact us physically or even mentally?
So before we get to that, I think you guys know that vaping is a very widespread issue now, right? If I just ask you in school, I don't think any of you have not heard of seen like some sort of a vaping experience. Unfortunately, as you know, vaping was developed originally to be a smoking cessation to help older people stop smoking. People that get heart disease and lung disease from smoking, when they vape, they thought it's going to remove all the stuff in the cigarette by just vaping that electronic cigarette and it's less harmful to them. That was the idea. But the idea did not really work because end up people using both instead of stopping. So it was never meant for the young people to use it. It was meant for somebody who's older, an adult, to help him stop cigarettes. So now when the teens, and now we're shifting into middle school, got their hand on it, it became a bigger problem that was not anticipated. And that comes into the physical effects on the older person is not the same as a younger person. Because as you guys know, your brains are still developing, right? I know you don't think that. I know you think it's already matured and beyond maturity. But in reality, it's still developing.
Yeah.
So the nicotine effects on that are tremendous. And it affects how you develop it. It can even affect some of the mood disorders. People can have different mood disorders based on their vaping experience. And it can give people respiration issues, the way they breathe. It can give them breathing problems. And some people even discover they can have cardiovascular heart disease related to vaping. And not to mention, a lot of people that do studies on this, they believe that this leads usually to a worse habit of using something else. It's never that you're going to start with vaping and end there. You start with vaping, but God knows what you're going to end with. You're going to say, I know, I'm smart, self-control. People have been saying that for millennials. Yeah. That's not how things work. Once you're in that, it's a slippery slope. I think that a term that came up so many times in this podcast, a slippery slope, meaning a slope. Once you start on it, you're going to go down. So it's a serious problem. We cannot take it lightly. We cannot say vaping is harmless. We cannot say everybody does it. We cannot say those things. It's a thing that has to be taken seriously. Because it will affect you, it will affect even your mental health, not just your physical health.
So what are the parents' roles in helping their kids not do, vaping at school and trying to cope with that?
I think the parental role is always important. I think parents are vigilant, that notice the first warning signs of their child.
Yeah.
These are usually the ones that help their kids. I know these are the most unpopular parents, but those are the ones that are thanked later in life for what they did. Parents who are not vigilant and it becomes a habit. Sometimes it's way too late to do anything about it. So the parents have a big role. But I think you guys are all now at an age where you also have decision making. You have choices to make. So you're no longer 3 or 4 where the parental decision is 100% of the problem. It becomes a ratio, how much the parental role is and how much your role is. And I want to focus in this episode more on your roles, not what the parents can do.
But it's just like our environment is so fed up with everyone vaping in the bathrooms in our schools. So it's very hard for us like not get peer pressure with everyone, doing it. So
definitely that's an element that will come up that you see everybody doing it. So the first thing that happens, you become what? Desensitized. Desensitized means it's normal. It's not a thing. It cannot be that bad. I don't see kids dying every day from it. That stuff that you keep lowering really how bad it is in your mind to the point that you feel, okay, if I do it one time, it's not a big deal. So you guys have to take that very seriously, because back in the day, it used to be cigarettes. They're the thing.
Yeah.
Now this was replaced by something that's a lot easier to use, doesn't have much smell. I know it has flavor, and it's easy to use in the school and it vanishes. And I think it all starts by, you have to know in your heart that it's wrong and it's harmful. I think if you start there, the chances are, now we can talk about peer pressure. But if you yourself don't think it's harmful and don't think it's wrong, then
Different story.
it doesn't matter. I mean, peer pressure or not, there's no point of even talking about it.
So Abuna, if you started vaping, how do you like stop, or like what are some good techniques to put an end to that habit?
So I think the first thing to do if somebody started vaping, the first thing they need to do is to be honest with their parents. And then to be honest with their father of confession and talk about it, to give advice, guidance. The second thing they need to do, they need to change their environment. To be honest, and I said this before, your friends are what's going to make you or break you, especially at this age. Later, not so much, but now it's really the group that will make you or break you. So if the guys or the gals, they vape, when you get together somewhere or you go out for an outing and somebody decides to post it in a car and then everybody tries it, okay, you guys have to eliminate those groups from your life. You have to. Don't say they're good, they're nice, they're Christian, doesn't matter. So the environment, the friends around you. And third, I would actually challenge some of you to educate yourselves on vaping and all the stuff now that we know about it. It's bad. So you guys exercise, you want to be healthy, you want to build up your muscles. You're doing all that, but you want to do something that will destroy all that. Do you see how it's contradictory to what you're trying to do? So if you're health conscious, there's no way you'll vape. So that's very important. The one last part is the spiritual part, which is the most important part. You guys have to know that our body is a temple of God. Is a temple of God. And we have to treat it as a temple of God. If we do anything to ruin that temple, it's a sin. If we do anything to harm that temple of God, that talent that God gave us, it's a sin. So vaping is a sin. It's wrong. And also some habits that we have to discuss. If somebody vapes, he cannot just take communion. He cannot just get out of the liturgy and take communion. He cannot. So all the stuff has to be addressed with your father of confession, because it's not to be taken lightly. It's something that has to be worked on.
What if one of our friends do vape? How can we help them as friends and like tell them to like stop vaping and like lead them to like the right direction?
So the first thing to do, especially if they're Orthodox, the first thing to do is encourage them to speak to their father of confession and to a servant they trust and their parents. That's the first thing. The second thing is try to guide them on the group around him or her that kind of lead them away from the church and from the good habits. Thirdly, try to be the sound of reason in their mind. Try to speak to them lovingly as a friend. Get the right information in their mind so that way they can think about it. But if somebody's not providing that source of information to them, they will never get it. If you ask most guys in high school about vaping, most of them do not know any of the harmful effects. Most of them just focus on the flavor. Yeah. And focus on nothing. It's light. It's not a big deal. I can stop anytime, and that's a joke. Because I, with my own eyes, have seen so many people. Even now, they're older. They're trying to stop it because they started early, and they can't. They really can't. They're crying that they can stop, and they can't. They're so into it that they can't. Of course, with the right help, they can and all that. But I'm saying, why get to that point?
Yeah.
Why get to that point?
I feel like this is all good in theory, and like we can talk about it and say like this is just to go find someone, but I feel like it's like really hard for someone who already in themselves feel ashamed or have already gotten that point where they understand this is wrong to then be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go tell my bason and my abuna and they're gonna help me and we're gonna create this plan. I feel like a lot of times what the vape does is, I know you talked about like causing like depression and all these like mental disorders, is that you become so dependent, like that is your only escape. Like when you get these side effects and you're down that slippery slope, that is what's keeping you moving every day. That is what's
okay. I like this question because the idea of escape is a big one, because that's the one thing I get to do to escape. And if you think about this will be like the social media that we talked about. The same word was used. It's our escape. It will be like all the bad habits we talked about. But this goes to if somebody's really trying to stop. They're really trying to stop. All these barriers don't matter. You'll see. If somebody really sees that this is wrong and there's something I cannot keep doing, I have to stop. All those barriers you're bringing up, they do not really get in the way. They will seek help, and and I've seen it with my own eyes, and they will be able to do it. But it goes to the will of the person. If the person is trying to stop, they will stop. If the person is okay with it, deep inside, they're not convicted. They don't, it's a plus minus. If it stops, it's great. If it doesn't, who cares? It's good. I'm enjoying. This person will never stop. So it goes back to how the person feels inside of them about the issue.
And I feel like how the person feels, as you said, is how they feel about like the topic in general. Like if someone thinks vaping is fine, it doesn't really hurt anyone except themselves, and kind of that my body, my choice, like mindset. Then
no matter what you say,
it's not gonna help.
It's not gonna work. You still can be, especially if that person is Orthodox, it could be the voice of God to them in a loving way. But really, that's all you can do.
And then that's when we go to like prayer, like you pray for these people, going back to like what Philo was saying.
Exactly. And if you know somebody else who can help them, you can, ask them to check on them or talk to them. But other than that, as a high school student, there's not much you can do other than advise, be a good influence, and try to be loving and pray, and maybe get some of the ones responsible to watch out for them. Other than that, there's nothing much you can do.
So what role does self-control play when you're like spiritually in like habits like vaping?
So the biggest advice I can give you guys, do not even try anything. If you have that mindset, do not even try. You're going to save yourself a whole lot of trouble growing up. But the idea is when we try without self-control, just try. The first try, this is harmless, try it. She did it, he did it, we're in the car hanging out. This loose mindset that let's try, it's not going to do anything, it's a one time. This lack of self-control for that first time is the first step on that slippery slope that we talked about. So my advice with self-control, do not even try. Do not even try, not even once. Stay away from it. Think of it badly from the beginning. Say you're not going to try. You don't want anything to do with it.
And that goes for vaping, alcohol, drugs,
Absolutely.
everything.
Marijuana, right? All of it.
Yeah.
That applies, same concept. Do not even try. There is no such a thing as one time. There is no such thing, I'm not going to do it again. Those two things are not guaranteed. And I can promise you, it never works. Almost never works. So from the global experience, do not even try. People who learn not to even try are always the ones who stay safe. The ones who try and take it lightly and think nothing will happen and think they have self-control, these are the ones that end up with trouble. So do not really talk up your self-control. Always assume that you don't have any, so you're not going to even try. It's the best thing to do. In a humble way. Of course, we need to build our self-control. But if you assume you know what, this thing is bigger than me. If I try it once, I might mess up. So you're going to be inclined to say, I'm going to stay away. Because out of humility. But if we talk about self-control, I can do this. I can stop. Most people who even are addicted to alcohol or drugs, if you talk to them, they will say, I can stop anytime I want. And they could be, I'm just telling you a bad situation. They could be dying. They could have cirrhosis in their liver. It's done. And they say, I can stop when I want to. It's too late, right? So the idea of I can stop whenever is false. The idea of trying is harmless is false. The idea of experimental is wrong. The idea of I'm going to try it once and that's going to be the end of it, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
So what should be our approach if someone at school says, try it? Like for the kids at home.
Thank you so much. I'm good. And walk away.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm good. I'm
Okay.
cool. Thank you, but thank you. And just walk away. I think the more time you spend in the interaction, the higher the risk he might be able or she might be able to convince you or get you to do it and think that this is nothing. But the more you already have a stamina, you already have a built-up, rehearsed defense system.
Yeah.
Thank you, I'm not going to even try. I'm done. I already made up my mind. So if all of us already made up their mind that they're not going to even try, and you already have that conviction side of you, no matter who comes with what, it is not going to happen. You're not going to try it. And trust me, we grew up with so much around us. You think when we grow up, the saints were walking down the street and St. Anthony was... No, we had stuff too. We had kids too in high school. We had kids in middle school. But The thing is, we already had that built-up defense system. No is a no. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to go down that route. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it. So I think the idea of establishing this in your heart so hard, I will not try any of this. This is not for me. It's going to help you quick to say, no, thank you, and walking away. You know, let me give you an example. If somebody's trying to, I know it's hard for you to imagine too, is trying to cut out carbs or cake. Okay, say I'm gonna for a week not eat a cake. Okay, and then you put a big nice cake in front of them. And then you told them, here, take a piece. Hey, no, I'm good. I'm gonna stick up to what I had. I'm not trying cake this week at all. And then you leave the cake in front of them for an hour. And they happen to walk by it the first time. They're gonna think about it, but they're not gonna do it. Second time, they're gonna think about it, but not gonna do it. Third time, you know, that idea is good. Yeah, it's just looking better. The cake is looking better and better. And then the fourth time, they're looking at the cake differently. They see it in a different light. What's going to happen the fifth time?
They're gonna eat
gonna
the
try
cake.
it.
They're going to eat a piece, a bite?
How they
Maybe
gonna
like
eat
a
the
lot
cake?
of it.
Most likely, they're going to eat the whole cake. Most likely, they will eat the whole cake. So the same thing with, I am not immune. I don't have enough strength in me to say no. And I let myself be exposed to frequent repetitive offers because the people around me who know me are like that. What's going to happen? Eventually I'll fail. So it's also good to assume that you're weak. Therefore you need the grace of God. I'm part of your weakness. I'm going to stay away from this in a humble way. I'm not saying weak in a depressive way. Weak in a humble way. I'm going to stay out of this. God gives me grace to stay away from these kind of influences. The more I stay away from them, the more I'm going to be safe. Take that cake out of the room, kind of thing, right? I don't want to look at it. I cannot say I'm strong. I can look at the cake all day and not eat it. Well, I'm challenging. I'm tempting myself. Do not tempt yourselves.
I think
Stay away.
I think circling back to like what we talked about with self-control, as cliche as it may sound, you really see the people that work on their self-control through something like fasting are the people that you see don't actually do vape, or
Absolutely.
it's like it's actually a good practice for those that are really
Absolutely.
trying to find out.
And honestly, guys, the major benefit of fasting is self-control, especially fasting which days?
Wednesdays and Fridays.
Thank you. So Wednesdays and Fridays, especially those. And I told you before, because we eat what we want on Monday, we eat what we want on Tuesday. Comes Wednesday, we change everything.
And then-
It's a change. I have to have the self-control to do it. And it's a whole day. And then Thursday comes, I eat whatever I want. And then Friday comes, I switch back. So to be able to do that when you're a high schooler or middle schooler or a college student, that generates so much self-control. And that's what we learn. And not just self-control with vaping and other things, self-control in your life in general against sin. So that's a benefit that you cannot underestimate the benefit of it.
So how can vaping kind of like also influence our education? Because I know kids that vape go to like the restroom 2 or 3 times in one period.
Yes.
So how can that affect also their
It
education?
absolutely affects the school performance. It affects your concentration, affects your learning. And of course, the disruptions, the need to do it frequently. And you know that need escalates, right?
Yeah.
So the first time you do it, you're not going to need it as much. When you do it for a few weeks, few months, and if you're doing it for a year or two, you're going to be on it like non-stop. You can't stop. It's constant.
Yeah.
So it gets worse and worse and worse. So it interrupts your school. It interrupts your education. It interrupts your studying. And also your concentration and focusing is affected by it too.
And I think it doesn't just cause problems like in school. It can cause problems in the house too.
Absolutely.
Or like in your life. Like I've seen people get kicked off of like sports programs or suspended from school, just detrimental like to their family, like how everyone views them too. It's not just like about the vape.
And the fitness, especially if you play a sport, the
Yeah.
fitness will change, right? Your fitness will change with it. You cannot keep it up.
Yeah.
So especially with your breathing and everything else.
So how should we view people that vape? Like, because I feel like us as high schoolers, whenever we see like people vape or we know people that vape, we tend to like push away from them, or we tend to like don't want to be near them as much.
So a couple of things. The people themselves we love. It doesn't matter what they do. We love the people, okay? But there's a difference between love and discernment. I love the person, but me being in contact with them or close to them will affect me negatively, right? So out of wisdom and discernment, I need to keep my boundaries. This has nothing to do with love, right? That has nothing to do with love. So pushing away or having a stick, we're saying that's wrong. But having the discernment to know that I should not be in this group, I should not be influenced by this group, I should not be affected by this. I need to keep my safe boundary so I don't start doing that too. This is safety. This is discernment. So that's good. So you see the difference?
Yeah.
But it still was love. I love the person. I have nothing against them, but I'm doing this for my sake, for my safety.
But I feel like practically you see like even your parents saying like don't talk to this person when it like the rumor spreads, or don't like hang around him too much or hurt too much. Like I know that like we all say like, oh, we hate the sin, love the person, but I feel like practically that's just so hard. So how do you actually like do that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question. I think not talking to the person is going extreme. I think that's not Christian and that's not loving. And it might be even harmful for the person themselves. But I think setting boundaries is important. And the boundaries go like this. If somebody does this and I spend so much time with them, I hang out with them, I'm in conversations with them, I will be affected. I can see the person, love them, talk to them, but I have to have boundaries. I have to keep the time I spend with them at bay. I have to keep the time they influence me at bay. I cannot allow myself to be hanging out with them constantly. All these things for safety. But going extreme as this person is altogether in totality bad, no. Most people will need somebody to be the voice of love and the voice of God in their life. But you cannot be, I got it. I'm going to be with that person. I'm going to hang out with them so I can convince them to be godly.
Missionary.
Yeah, you cannot be a missionary mindset with that, because what's going to happen?
Like
We're gonna be
You're going to be his buddy in vaping.
yeah.
You're going to be his twin in vaping, because that's
like,
just what happens. Bad company corrupts good morals. Good morals can help bad company, but it's hard. It's not usually the case. So you have to keep those boundaries for real. You have to understand, for your own safety, you have to keep your boundaries.
But how about like the boundaries that cause the person to fall more? Like I know for me, like if I was vaping for help my depression and then now all of a sudden no one likes me anymore, how am I going to be like, oh yeah, like I'm going to stop? Like you're going to feel worse.
That's a very
and
good
want it more.
question, because ultimately we care about the person, especially our brothers and sisters, and then salvation. If somebody's vaping to help with their depression, then we have bigger problems. We have a lot of help that needs to be involved, and have people bigger than us, older than us, need to be involved in helping that person. You're not going to help them. You can be loving, and you can always reaffirm your love for that person, but hanging out with them and spending time with them and being very close to them will affect you, right? Because more likely than not, they will vape when you're there. They will vape when you're hanging out. And the result of that is you're going to be exposed, and you might try and might get tempted and might do it. But that's when you have to involve people who are supposed to help you out, the servants, the priests, people that can look out for that person and care for their salvation and help them. And also do not show any signs of lack of love. I think acting weird or like not talking to the person and all that is not good. And this becomes case by case, like person by person, so we cannot generalize. If a person's a whole group that doesn't do that, and the whole group doesn't do it, and that person is part of it that does it occasionally, this is the kind of person who can help by being in a group to secure them, and we refuse that, so the person will push away. But when you're in a group that most of them do it, or that couple of people do it and couple don't, that's when you're really playing your odds against falling into this and getting to do it. So you have to use wisdom too. And ask for wisdom, ask for counsel from your father of confession, from your servants, people you trust, to guide you on case by case. But generally, you have to keep your boundaries.
And I feel like even farther than that, we like as a culture, I think it's important to kind of break the stigma with like actually finding professional help. Because I know as we get into like these harder topics like vaping, leading to alcohol, leading to marijuana, like a lot of that does come down to actually seeking help more than just
Absolutely. And we have professionals in those areas for a reason, right? That's their job. So we cannot take, and there's no stigma associated with it. If somebody has pneumonia, they're going to see the doctor and take the antibiotics. If somebody has this issue, they have to seek a professional to help them out. That's much better than them continuing to do the same thing,
So is there anything in the Bible, I know it's not going to be specifically talk about vaping, but is there anything in the Bible that can like help us whenever like we get offered a vape, or like if we know we're doing something wrong, it can help us?
We mentioned that already, but we talked about how the Bible tells us we are the temple of God. We are the temple of God. and we cannot do anything to ruin the temple of God. We cannot do anything to harm the temple of God. We also have to know that God gave us our health as a talent. Remember the talents? So we have to take care of the talent. We cannot harm the talent, right? We cannot just hide it in the earth and say it's fine. We have to trade with it and take care of it. So those kind of give us the ideas that this is part of the common theme of the Bible and the Christian teachings.
And on that note, thank you, Abuna, for this great talk about vaping. Please follow us on all social media with the name Teen Talk, and thank you for listening.